What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Opening Tee podcast for the 3M Open. This is the first set of our podcast, in our set of three that we do for the Awesemo Golf podcast series. What I do in this short form podcast, if you haven't joined me yet, this is the longer of the three, probably 20 to 25 minutes, somewhere in that range, because my voice gets crackly and boring and all the alike after that amount of time. So I try and condense it into three different ones, talking about specific things in each of them. This one, I cover all of the information from last week and set up the week that will be. In the second one, I go over the fit and the form for all of the golfers in the field, and then I cap it all off on Wednesday with my ownership podcast, the Against the Grain podcast. So three quick ones, all part of the Awesemo Golf podcast series. How I always start off this one, the Opening Tee podcast, is the foursome of facts from last week. These are the four most important facts that I found from last week, or some talking points that I want to go over. So, Jon Rahm, number one in the world after the win. A fantastic win it was, but not without controversy. Of course, there always has to be a little controversy. On the 16th hole, he hit a magnificent chip. The ball was buried. It was just an all-around great chip. He chipped it in for birdie. The TV came back like 2 minutes later, and this is it's kind of a twofold part one of my foursome of facts here. First was about Jon Rahm, and then for the absolute disgrace that the PGA Tour puts on with their rules enforcement. Okay, so on 16, right, he hits it in, chips it in for birdie. Then he tees off on 17, and all of a sudden Nick Faldo starts to talk about, oh, well, it looked like the ball moved. And, so they showed us an up close. They showed it to us in real time. They showed it to us an up close. They zoomed in as far as you could possibly go to. Looked like the camera was in the grass, for criminy sakes. And when Rahm was in the motion of his setup and swing, it looks as if the ball may have moved ever so slightly. And I mean, not enough for three dimples on it to move, maybe two. Lo and behold, the PGA Tour, an hour after Jon Rahm has signed his scorecard and won the golf tournament, has decided to enforce a two-stroke penalty on him, bringing his winning score down or bringing a birdie to a bogey, and in effect changing the entire outcome of the final round showdown GPPs for DraftKings. We saw the first place, $150K was decided on it. So crazy. I know it affected me over on FanDuel. I went from 6th to 7th in the big $500. It was just, it was brutal. But hey, that's why you play the game. But for me, though, at being a golfer, I totally understand the nuances and rules of the game. I had to pass a rules test myself. And on this one, I understand the people that stand by saying, hey, Jason, this is a penalty. It needs to be enforced. Okay, I guess I can understand that. In my interpretation of the rules, this is not a penalty. I do not believe he did anything to improve his lie, which is where the rules state. And it also states that if you make a ball move, you should be putting it back to the place in which the ball moved. I don't believe he could have done that. He couldn't have touched the ball and made it move anywhere more than what it did. It didn't move enough for him to warrant a moving back. So we'll move on from this. Speaking of move, we'll move on from this and talk about Joel Statler. Joel Statler over on a European tour has his second straight good week. This one he cashes out a 125-1 victory. A few people in the industry had tipped him off, so always want to be looking at that stuff through Twitters and the like. A nice payout there. My third foursome of fact for the week is you don't need courses to be 8,000 yards to be competitive and to have low scores on the PGA Tour. You just don't. This week was a clear indication. A par 72, 7,300 yards, made some of the best in the world falter. The winning score was in the single digits because of that silly thing with Rahm. But still, let's just say the winning score was in the single digits. Just really, really impressive golf course. I liked that style of golf so much more than the Birdie Fest. It's compelling. It's really interesting to watch the best in the world have to really focus on every single shot, knowing that they can't even miss in the wrong place. They've got to miss in the right place to just have a chance. Whereas, some tournaments, normal tournaments, PGA Tour events, If a player misses, he can get up and down for par, maybe even sometimes birdie on the par 5s. Not this week at Muirfield Village. It was fantastic to watch. And my last one kind of goes along with this, is that you find a golfer that puts the ball in the fairway and makes a couple of putts. He can compete anywhere, and that's Matt Fitzpatrick. We got to give him a hand. A fantastic Sunday. He goes out and shoots 4 under as the rest of the field was shooting 76 or more. He vaults up the leaderboard and has one of his best finishes on the PGA Tour, finishing alone in third at the Memorial. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of Matt Fitzpatrick in the coming years, as he will be a full-time member of the tour after that finish. All right, so before we move on to your Not Your Average Cut Sweat segment, I want to say thank you to SuperDraft, our sponsor of the show. If you haven't checked them out, check them on out. It's a really great way to differentiate your DFS, PGA DFS, and they are the future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. SuperDraft offering contests right now for PGA, NASCAR, MMA, really soon MLB and NBA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft using promo code Awesemo10. $10 free on your first 10 or more, and first deposit of 10 or more, and $20 total free on your first deposit of 100 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits and more winning. Some of these next golfers did some of the winning on their own, while others, who we're going to start off with, not so much, as we move into our Not Your Average Cut Sweat segment. And man, it was a crazy one this week. The first time in a long time it actually went from down a number. So it went from 2 to 3, 2 over to 3 over, instead of the other way, which we've normally been accustomed to going. This time it went the other way. It was fun. It got Tiger Woods in and Brendan Todd and a bunch of other people. However, it didn't get in Ernie Els. And in fact, Ernie Els helped it move to 3 as he stood in the middle of the fairway on 9. All he needed to do was make par, and he keeps the 2 over as the cut line. But he made 7 from the middle of the fairway, going from 2 over to 5 over, missing the cut. Shane Lowry, oh man, he gave me some heart palpitations, let me tell you. He missed 2 inside of 5 feet to miss the cut by 1, and in total, Lowry lost 5 strokes putting and shot +4, missing the cut by 1. Sung J M, he needed a 22-footer this week to make the cut, and for the first time in 3 weeks, Sung J M did not make the putt he needed to make the cut, so he went trunk slamming for the weekend. Paul Casey, he needed a 36-footer. A 36 on the front 9, bookended by an 11-footer on 9, and he couldn't do it. That was after the 8 that he pulled off on the front 9 on the par 3. Yikes, Paul Casey not playing the weekend. How about not playing the weekend? Daniel Berger needed bogey from 150 in the middle of the fairway on 9. He made double. Adam Long had an 18-footer. He missed. Homa made 5 from the middle of the fairway to miss his second straight cut on the number. Yikes. Gooch missed a 40-footer. No surprise there. Charles Schwartzel, ready for this one? He only hit it 150 yards off the 19. No idea why. It must have hit a tree or something, but it was in the fairway. It left him 250 in. He then put it in the water. What a surprise. He made double, needed par to make the cut. Then, on the other side, Schauffele, he needed 3 under to get up and down on green side. He ended up making the cut and put up a bunch of points on the weekend, and in fact, even got himself inside the top 20. So Xander Schauffele yet again finding his way to a good finish. Colin Morikawa, he needed a 1 under day on Friday, and he did it. Now on to the guys that if they could have found any semblance of putter, I would not be talking about them in this segment. Joaquin Niemann, oof, boy, he lost almost 6 strokes putting on the 2 days and shot +4. Wow. Lowry lost 5 and shot +4. Brandon Grace lost 4 and shot +5. Roy Sabatini lost 3.8 and shot +5, while Kevin Kisner lost 2 strokes putting and shot +4. So all of those guys, if they had just met the field with their flat stick, they would have easily seen the weekend. All right, now let's move on to the statistical review from last week, and it's a pretty good one here, where you start off, and if you are new to this podcast, what I do is compare the age-old statistics to the new statistics or strokes gained. So we'll start off with off the tee. Xander Schauffele, and we're going to start with strokes gained first. Xander Schauffele, Luke List, Matt Wolff, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Patrick Reed, Tony Finau, Matt Fitzpatrick, Brendan Steele, and Scotty Scheffler and Bubba Watson round out the top 10. Now when we switch over to driving accuracy, really surprised. Xander Schauffele led the field this week in driving accuracy. Very impressive. Jim Furyk, number 2. Rory McIlroy, number 3. Jon Rahm, number 4. Matt Fitzpatrick, number 5. Jason Day, 6. Ches Reavie, 7. Morikawa, 8. Streelman, 9. Horschel and Steele round out the top 10. So I would say maybe about half the guys that we find from the driving accuracy wind up in the top 10 and off strokes gained off the tee this week, so maybe a little bit more correlation there. But even when you look at driving distance, Luke List, Tony Finau, Matt Wolff, Patrick Rogers, Scott Piercy, Roy McIlroy, Scott Harrington, Bubba Watson, Brendan Steele, Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, and Xander Schauffele. So Xander Schauffele, number 1 in driving accuracy and number 10 in driving distance. No surprise to see him as number 1 strokes gained off the tee. So you can see, at Memorial, it really was a combination of finding the fairway and a little bit of distance. That's what puts Schauffele up in first. You see a lot of the other guys mixed in, found themselves both in the top 10 of driving accuracy and distance for the week. So a lot of correlation there. Moving on to the strokes gained on the approach. First, we are going to start with the greens in regulation for the week. And this is, I can't believe he didn't finish higher, and obviously his putter let him down, but Xander Schauffele also led the field in greens in regulation for the week. Crazy enough. That's just how it works. CT Pan was number 2, Jon Rahm 3, Luke List 4, Eric Van Rooyen number 5, Keith Mitchell number 6, Scotty Scheffler 7, Sergio Garcia, Louis Oosthuizen, Matt Wallace, Billy Horschel, Matt Kuchar, and Bubba Watson were round out the top 10. As we move over to the strokes gained on the approach, I'm sure we're going to see some crossover here. Might even see Tiger Woods show up here, I think, right? All right, let's go into it. Ryan Palmer, number 1. Bubba Watson was number 3. Eric Van Rooyen, number 2. Gary Woodland, number 4. Tiger, 5. Siwoo Kim, 6. Colin Morikawa, 7. Jon Rahm, 8. Kevin Na, 9. And Zach Johnson, number 10, edging out Jordan Spieth by .01. As Jordan Spieth came in 11th. Strokes gained on the approach looked really good. Around the green looked really good. Just lost a little bit off the tee and a little bit putting. Terrible week putting, actually, if you want me to be honest with you. Still a pretty good week for him. Came in a tie for 13th, did Jordan Spieth. But when we go back to strokes gained on the approach, a lot of crossover to greens in regulation. We see a lot of guys showing up there. Xander Schauffele, interestingly, didn't show up, so not a direct correlation between greens in regulation and strokes gained on the approach, although Xander was not too far behind Jordan Spieth, actually. Xander was 12th in this. So maybe some decent crossover. CT Pan also was another one that did not show up. Hit a ton of greens, but didn't really show up in terms of strokes gained on the approach all that much. Interesting to see Eric Van Rooyen, who was in the field this week. He'll probably be like 9,000 in terms of price. So it'll be interesting to see if I'll head back there this week after a really solid week with his irons. Okay, let's go into the putting in our last stat. Mackenzie Hughes, man, he rode a hot putter to a U.S. Open Invitational. Hey, so did Henrik Norlander. Both of them gaining almost 8 strokes putting on the week. Both of them are headed to the U.S. Open because of their tied for 6th finish. Matt Fitzpatrick was number 3, gaining 8 strokes on the week. Jason Day, 4. Tony Finau, number 5. How did he not win this tournament? Danny Willett, 6. Sepp Straka, 7. Matt Wallace, 8. Christian Bezuidenhout, 9. And Kevin Na, 10. So Bezuidenhout, Na, Wallace, Day, even Fitzpatrick. No surprise to see these guys up there as some of the best putters this week. They are typically some of the best putters that we have all year. In fact, even if we stretch it out, Patrick Reed also in the top 15, as is Patrick Rogers. So all of the good putters really getting it done this week on these hard greens, clearly showing that putting out, although putting may be variable, the best putters seem to putt best on the hardest of greens, shown again this week. In terms of putts per GIR, a definite crossover. Tony Finau, Henrik Norlander, Matt Wallace, Siwoo Kim, Carlos Ortiz, Pat Reed, Victor Hovland, Mark Leishman, Jason Day, and Kevin Na. So maybe about a 50% crossover there. All right, our last thing before we move on to the 3M Open and the TPC of Twin Cities, all we always do is review our birdies from the previous week, or birdies are better. Tony Finau led the field with 21. Matt Fitzpatrick was the only other guy to get into the 20s. I'm sorry, Matt Wallace at 20. John Rahm, 18, as well as Siwoo Kim and Victor Hovland. Mackenzie Hughes led a bunch of guys at 17, including Norlander, Kevin Na, Patrick Reed, Matt Wolff, Danny Willett, Scott Piercy. Scott Piercy, man, wow. Scott Piercy shot plus 12, but had 17 birdies. Crazy. Jason Day, 16. Billy Horschel, 16. Rory McIlroy actually had 17, I'm sorry. Patrick Cantlay was 16 as well, and Bubba Watson Ryan's out. The guys above 15, a bunch more right at that 15 number. All right, so now we're going to move on to our preview for this week, the 3M Open and TPC Twin Cities. And let me tell you, we've had a millionaire maker every single week, and with the FedEx St. Jude coming up next week, or the week after this, I should say, which is expected to be a strong field. And then the week after that, we get the PGA Championship, golf's first major since coming, actually golf's first major of the year, right? I mean, we didn't have one. We were going to have Augusta, and then everything got canceled. So we haven't had a major. We're going to get one in 2 weeks. So what a perfect time to join Awesemo Plus if you're not already a member. We have so much behind the paywall, and you're getting to join for just $8.95 a week. So what better time to step on the PGA DFS golf course than now? So come join us on the other side, and it will be worth it, especially for the time that is coming up. And of course, if you're looking to join Awesemo Plus just on the whole with all the sports coming back, what a time to do it than now. All right, so let's move on to the 3M Open. We're playing for $1 million on DraftKings again. And let's learn about the course, TPC Twin Cities. It's a par 71, 7,500 yards. It's got 4 par 3s, 11 par 4s, 3 par 5s, the par 3s. The first one plays short, 177, but I think they even moved that up to 150. There were a ton of birdies on it last year. So that says to me that they move it up a lot. Oh yeah, before I move on, I wanted to say this is the second year of the 3M Open being played at TPC Twin Cities. This is the second year of the event. So obviously not a ton of data to go off of, but we have some. The numbers: par 71, 7,500 yards. The 11 par 4s measure 425, 470, 500, 425, 380, 500, 380, 470, 440, 450, and 410. The 3 par 5s are all in the same category: 594, 593, 596, or I should say same yardage spectrum, all around 600. That makes up, as I said, par 71, 7,500 yards. The driving accuracy last year, pretty easy to hit the fairway, 66% of the time you were doing so. And it was one of the easiest to hit it long, as the average drive was over 302 yards last year. So a lot of drivers being pulled out on this golf course and a lot of fairways being hit. Because of that, because of those two things, over 74% on the greens in regulation last year. Not a surprise to see that. When you did miss the greens, however, 55% of the time you were getting up and down. One of the top 10 hardest on the PGA Tour for that metric. While on the greens, top 20 hardest to putt. So not terribly hard, but not terribly easy. Right in the average, I would say. Nothing too big or small. Now, when we head into learning about the field, and like I said at the top of this, the field is going to be quite different this week, and we'll go into that now. We have 6 of the world's top 30 here instead of 16 of the world's top 20. We only get 6 of the world's top 30. That's if Brooks Koepka keeps his name in the field as well. We saw him a little bit battle with injuries. His knee was bothering him, it looked like. So We'll hear more about them or the top players in the field at just after this little segment here where I go through the field and some of the players you may not heard of or not know why they're in the field. So before we get into my salary guesses where I talk about the top players in the field, let's talk about who makes it up. First, of course, is the winner of the PGA Championship, winner of the Players Championship, winner of any WGC event, winner of any invitationals. Then, of course, the tourney winners from the previous 2 years. Then we get into some weird ones. The career money exemptions. KJ Choi, Luke Donald, and Bo Van Pelt playing off of that one this week. Sponsors exemptions now. Tim Herron and Tom Lehman, the designer of the course. He'll be playing this week. Tim Herron also getting a nod. Then some other ones. Agnes Flanagan. Now, there's a name I'm going to have to look up for everybody this week. Matthias Schwab gets another bid. Satith Thagala gets another start, as well as Bernd Wiesberger. Then there's a new one, commissioner exemption, and maybe this has something to do with COVID. I'll have to look up what this commissioner exemption is because I'm not sure what it is, but Eric Van Rooyen is getting in on this one. And then we've got top 125 prior seasons FedEx Cup list, top 125 prior season with non-members, so Doc Redman obviously fits in that category. Top 10 from the previous event, not otherwise exempt, is Chase Seifert getting in on there. Major medical now. Plenty of guys. Brunson Burgoon, Chris Kirk, Charles Schwartzel, Jamie Lovemark, Grayson Murray, Hudson Swafford, Sung Yul No, and Greg Chalmers all getting in the field. Then we got the Korn Ferry grads from the previous year. Then we got the 126 to 150 category even getting in, as well as the hardest categories to play out of on the PGA Tour getting in this week, the reorder from 34 to 38, which Will Gordon actually fits in right now. He's going to get his card for next year, but in terms of this year, he still won't have his card until I believe it's another top 25. If he gets another top 25, he'll have his card for the rest of the year. If not, he'll have very limited starts until the PGA Tour season starts again next year, where he'll have the same status as Doc Redman has this year. So, lo and behold, though, Will Gordon is in this field. George McNeil is next. Ricky Barnes, Chad Campbell, Jonathan Bird, Alex Jecka, who we saw over the hiatus play in the Outlaw Tour. We get a chance to play him this week on the big one. Looks like Jerry Kelly, Arjan Atwal, John Merrick, Tommy Gainey, and David Lingmerth round out that category. All right, so before we get on out of here, we're at about 22 and a half minutes, so perfect amount of time that we like to do. Talk about the important statistics for this week. Looking at the top 10 of last week, most everybody got it done on their approaches, or their approaches were their best strokes gained attribute, especially 1 and 2 of Wolff and Morikawa. Wolff didn't even gain 4 strokes off the tee, or on average, didn't even gain a stroke on average. He did it all with his irons. So did Morikawa, both of them gaining over 10 with their irons here last year. A couple of guys in the top 10 did get it done off the tee, though. Sam Burns was a guy that got it done mostly off the tee, while Bryson, pre-Hulk Bryson, he got it done a little bit off the tee, but more on the approach. Gained 4 on the approaches and 2.8 off the tee. So still more heavier on the approaches and, of course, on the putting. We know with Matt Wolff that when he starts to make them, man, he's a very, very good and streaky putter. So that's what we're going to look for. We're going to look for some streaky putters this week, some guys that have gained over a couple of strokes a couple of times. And to find out more on that information, of course, check out my Strokes Gained article that I come out with every Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning. And, of course, I recap it in my second part of the Awesemo Golf Podcast series, the Fit and Form article, where I talk about all that strokes gain analysis and look at some of those guys that we know can get hot with the putter. Now we just need to match them up with some guys that are hitting their irons well, and you might have found the recipe for a good start here. So some of those guys that we're going to be looking at for the top end of our lineups this week, I'm guessing the top 5. I don't believe we're going to get more than 5 over 10K this week. I can't imagine. I suspect Dustin Johnson, even coming off of his almost last place finish last week at the Memorial, would be 11.3. I suspect Tommy Fleetwood in his return to the golf course will be 10.9K. Tony Finau coming off the top 10 should have been a lot better than that, man. He had a 4-shot lead. However, he played his last 27 holes at 10 over par. Yikes. That's not going to get it done anywhere in any tournament. I don't care if it's a U.S. Open or a Memorial. It's just not going to happen. So DJ 11.3, Tommy Fleetwood 10.9, Tony Finau 10.7, Brooks Koepka coming off of his almost 60th place finish. I think it actually was 10.5K, whereas Paul Casey, coming off that miscut, will slide in at 10,000. I believe they'll still put Paul Casey above Matt Wolff, even though Matt Wolff's the defending champion. Coming off of a decent week at the Memorial, I suspect still Paul Casey will get the nod. Though I think you should expect to see a 9K Matt Wolff printed for tomorrow's salary. So not a huge, not a deep field by any stretch. It's going to take a lot of research, a lot of finessing to get some lineups that you actually are looking at and like. The field is just not very deep, especially when you see reorder category 34 to 38 getting in this field as part of an exemption. You know it's going to be a deep field. But hey, listen, we're still playing for $1 million on DraftKings, so it's all the same. So until next time, everybody, thank you for coming by the Opening Tee podcast. I very much appreciate the listen. And of course, if you could like and subscribe if you're not already doing so to this video, that would be much appreciated. And of course, we'll have plenty of giveaways, so be sure to check out our Twitter, Awesemo_com Twitter handle for more information on that. So until the Fit in the Form podcast tomorrow evening or Tuesday morning, I thank you all for joining, and we will see you on the other side. Cheers.